Thank you. Thank you very much. President Obed, if you allow, I will speak in French. As you know, I was part of a major national inquiry, and the challenge was to truly represent this wide diversity that we have here, the issues that are experienced by the Indigenous people of Canada, the Métis. And as you know, there are bills that bring us once again together, everyone together, towards the best of all possible worlds. Do you think that we should have a national council for the Inuit, for First Nations, and for the Métis? Or should we keep this pan-Canada, pan-Canadian formula?
Thank you for the question, Senator Adet. There are times when there are legislation or policies that apply to all Indigenous peoples in Canada equally. There are other times when there are specificities within a particular policy area or a particular focus of, could be geographic, where First Nations, Métis, and Inuit have very different ways of interacting with government or of approaching a policy issue. I'll take the example of the Indigenous languages legislation. We had hoped that the government of Canada would have an Inuit, First Nations, and Métis sections within that piece of federal legislation that would be best suited for the needs of each population. For Inuit, Inuktitut, our Indigenous language, is a majority language in Inuit Nunangat. In a jurisdiction like Nunavut, it is the majority language of the jurisdiction, not just of the Inuit subset within the jurisdiction. And in a place like Nunavik in northern Quebec, I mean, the language rate, the retention rates and the mother tongue rates are, in the 90th percentile. So the idea that the federal government has no responsibility to provide government services to our Inuit populations in Inuktitut, in our homeland, is just a fundamental a departure from the way that Canada treats English and French when it comes to majority language status. And the fact that we couldn't have language in that legislation that was Inuit specific, that reflected our reality and in relation to our language. And largely we found it was because many other Indigenous languages in this country are endangered or don't have the ability to be used as a mechanism for public service delivery. And so then we as Inuit suffer from that other reality. So that's just an example of how I think specific legislation could treat First Nations, Inuit, and Métis specifically, and where we are and how we interact, rather than lumping us all together in certain areas and then ultimately us not being able to have that the type of consideration that we would